Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be recapping week 3 of the NFL in 1 minute per game. Starting off with a Thursday night football game, the Giants versus the 49ers. Deebo Samuel had a huge game stepping in for an injured Brandon Ayuk. He had 6 receptions, 129 yards, and a touchdown. Brock Purdy looked sharp, excluding the first drive where he possibly could have thrown 3 picks. Quite crazy, but he settled in 310 yards, 2 touchdowns. Great performance for him. The leading wide receiver for the Giants only had 32 yards, kind of indicative of how their passing game was in this game. Not good at all. CMC, classic game, over 100 all-purpose yards, got another touchdown. I believe that's 11 games in a row with a touchdown. What a crazy stat. And the 49ers defense was locked down. It's just probably the best defense in football again. And thanks to Shanahan, it is a very consistently good defense. The 49ers took this one 30-12 against the Giants, controlled the whole game here, and the 49ers moved to 3-0. The Titans versus the Browns was another display of Cleveland's new upgraded defense under new defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz. They allowed only 3 points this game, their second time they've done that. The first one was against the Bengals week 1. Deshaun Watson had a huge bounce-back game. He looked awesome, one of the best quarterbacks this week. Myles Garrett had 3.5 sacks, 3 TFLs, and 5 quarterback hits. 3.5 sacks is crazy. Myles Garrett, we know he's elite. Cleveland run defense held Derrick Henry to 20 total yards. If you had him in fantasy football, Derrick Henry got you 2 points. That's it. That is absurd. We all know how good Derrick Henry is, and that Browns defense is even better. Tennessee held to 94 total yards. They didn't have 100 yards. They did not go up and down the football field once in total yards. That's a ridiculous stat and very showing of how good this Cleveland defense really is. Kareem Hunt made his return to Cleveland. Going forward, he shares the backfield with Jerome Ford and hopefully can contribute how he did last year to this Browns team. The Browns win this one 27-3. The Atlanta Falcons took on the Detroit Lions this week, and Amon-Ra St. Brown had another great game. 9 receptions, 102 yards. Rookie Sam Laporta was really the highlight of this game. He had 8 receptions, 84 yards, and a huge touchdown, a 56-yard bomb to break this game open. Bijan Robinson had a down game. We thought this Atlanta, or at least I thought this Atlanta run offense would destroy this Detroit run defense, but it really didn't. 10 rushes, 33 yards, that's 3.3 per carry. Not very good. And on the other side of the ball, Jahmyr Gibbs had 17 carries, 80 yards. With David Montgomery being out, he really had to step into that workhorse role, and he did it pretty well. The Lions kind of controlled this kind of stale game, 20-6. The Saints versus the Packers. The Packers were without Aaron Jones, David Bakhtiari, Christian Watson, and Jair Alexander. So basically all of their best players from each position group, and they were down 17-0 to the Saints at halftime. But Derek Carr went down with an injury in the third quarter, which ended up being a sprained AC joint. And this Green Bay team came back and won this game 18-17 at home in Lambeau. Jordan Love clutched down the stretch, what they wanted to see out of him. The Saints offense with Jameis was completely useless, and I expect it to be again this week. Chris Olave, though, 8 receptions, 104 yards. He's becoming this wide receiver 1 on this team. He has been actually for a bit now, but he's standout, and people are putting him in the top 10 wide receiver conversation, which I think is very valid. Green Bay steals this one 18-17, though. New Orleans doesn't score another point after Derek Carr goes out, and Green Bay picks up a huge win. The Denver Broncos versus Miami Dolphins is a historic game for a couple of reasons. Number one reason, the final score of this game was Miami 70, Denver 20. Miami scored the second most points in NFL history in this game and could have broke the record, but didn't want to be seen as unsportsmanlike. I respect Mike McDaniel for that. But 70 points on Sean Payton's defense. Tua had more touchdowns than incompletions. He had 4 touchdowns, 3 incompletions this whole game. Running the ball was the story of this game, because even when they got up, they were just running it, and Denver's linebackers could not tackle. Raheem Mostert, 142 total yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground. Devin Achane, 233 yards, 4 touchdowns. They had 8 touchdowns combined between their 2 running backs. That is ridiculous. And Courtland Sutton, 2 fumbles. This Denver team, I don't know, man. I'm so sorry. I don't know. The defense has players. It's not a horrible roster on defense, but Sean Payton, man, he had his linebackers looking clueless out there. This was a historically bad defensive performance, and honestly, I don't know where Denver goes from here with this. Sean Payton is not it, at least on the defensive side of the ball so far. The Chargers and the Vikings was a hyped up game, and it kind of lived up to the hype in a weird way. Justin Herbert, 40 of 47, 405 yards, 3 touchdowns. Crazy game. Absolutely crazy game. Keenan Allen, 18 catches, 215 yards. Historic day for him. 215 yards is crazy. Mike Williams had 121 yards before he tore his ACL, and now he's out for the year. Really sucks to hear. Wish he could stay healthy, man. Torn ACL. I will hope that he is back as soon as possible. But 121 yards before that, too. It's crazy. I hope he gets better fast. Justin Herbert had a tipped ball that should have been a pick to go up. It got tipped off. It went straight to the defender's hands, tipped off into the end zone to his receiver for a touchdown. It was crazy. And then Minnesota got the ball back off of a fumble, and Kirk Cousins tried to force one into TJ Hawkinson, went off his hands, picked in the end zone, and Minnesota falls to 0-3. The Chargers won this one 28-24. The New England Patriots took on the New York Jets in a game that everyone could guess would be a low-scoring game. It was the most predictable game ever. Lackluster offense on both sides, stout defense on both sides. Ezekiel Elliott actually had a surprisingly good day. 16 carries, 80 yards. Pretty good for him at his stage of his career. Pharaoh Brown, the tight end, had a 58-yard touchdown catch that ended up being the difference in this game. Very stale, just a defensive matchup here. And Zach Wilson, it's time to go. It's time to move on from Zach Wilson. This experiment should be over now. New England won this one 15 to the Jets 10. The Buffalo Bills played the Washington Commanders this week, and it wasn't much of a contest. Sam Howell was really rough. 0 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Not liking that, especially from a guy you want to see development from. Stephon Diggs, 111 yards. Great day from him. The Bills' defensive line was the story of this game. 9 sacks, 15 QB hits, 4 interceptions, like I said, from Sam Howell, and a touchdown. What a day for the Bills' defense. 9 sacks is crazy. 15 QB hits. This Washington Commanders' offensive line needs to get in the film room because that's not all right. Buffalo, dominant win. They take on Miami this week in a great matchup that could be 2 Super Bowl contenders. Buffalo wins this one 37 to Washington's 3. The Houston Texans took on the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jaguars tend to struggle with the Texans, and the theme stuck in this one. CJ Stroud's had a historic start to his career. 906 yards through 3 games puts him in a group of 3 to ever have more than 900 yards in their first 3 games. Tank Dell this game, 5 receptions, 145 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown was a huge touchdown. 0 sacks in this game between both teams, so no one was getting any kind of pressure. Concern for me over Jacksonville's defense. I think a lot of people overlook this Jacksonville defense when really looking at this roster and considering them a AFC contender / Super Bowl contender this offseason. This defense is not good, especially the secondary. Calvin Ridley was really not a big factor, and they're expecting more out of him. Week 1, he looked like a huge factor, and since then, he's not been anywhere. Andrew Beck, a fullback for the Texans, had a kick return touchdown, a big man touchdown, kind of mid-big man, but not like an offensive line big man, but a big man touchdown, took it all the way to the house, one of the most electric things all week. The Texans routed the Jaguars 37-17 in Jacksonville. Huge win for the Texans. The Colts played the Ravens, and Zach Moss got 30 carries this game. Is all you need to know. There was a tropical storm nearby, pretty bad weather, some wind going on, nothing too bad, but bad weather nonetheless. 30 carries for Zach Moss, 122 yards. Lamar Jackson had 14 carries, 101 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. Heavy run, obviously, 30 carries, 14 carries from a quarterback shows that it was a heavy run game here. The Colts hung in, and there was a really bad no pass interference call on Zay Flowers in overtime. This one ended up going to overtime. Zay Flowers was clearly held. No flag there. Colts got it back, kicked the field goal, won this one 22-19 in Baltimore. Kind of a tough loss for Baltimore here. The Carolina Panthers faced the Seattle Seahawks, and the story of last year's game was the Panthers running it all over the Seahawks, and this game was flipped from last year. The Seahawks ran it all over the Panthers. Kenneth Walker had 2 touchdowns. Carolina had no run game whatsoever, 44 total yards. And Adam Thielen had a heck of a day. 11 receptions, 145 yards, touchdown. Andy Dalton threw it 58 times in this game for 361 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kind of makes it unclear. Andy Dalton seemed to have a bit more success in this offense. So it's kind of a rough time. We all know that it takes time to develop rookie QBs. The Seahawks ended up winning this one in ground dominance, 37-27 over the Panthers. The Bears and the Chiefs played, and you could say the biggest story of this was probably Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And that's really the story of this game, because on the football field, it wasn't much of a contest. Justin Fields had under 100 yards passing. Didn't even throw for 100 yards. Mahomes threw 24 of 33 for 272 yards, 3 touchdowns before getting pulled. And Jerick McKinnon had 2 reception touchdowns. They love doing the little flip underneath to the running back. Kelce had his touchdown. Actually, he audibled the route without telling Mahomes. It was supposed to be a corner route, but he put a foot inside and just found some open space. And Mahomes knows him well enough to know that he was going to do that. So that was a funny story. But the Chiefs handled this one in Arrowhead very easily, 41 to the Bears 10. The Cowboys versus the Cardinals. What a game. Upset of the year. Josh Dobbs, 17 of 21, 189 yards, 1 touchdown. James Conner, 14 carries, 98 yards, 1 touchdown. 7 yards a carry this game for James Conner. Great game. Tony Pollard, 23 carries, 122 yards. Also a great game for him. The Dallas Run D allowed 222 yards rushing. That's the story of this game, and that's what won the Cardinals this game. Dak had a huge interception in the fourth quarter, threw it in triple coverage. Kaiser White kind of lurking as that middle linebacker over the middle with a pick to seal this one. And the Cowboys were very banged up going into this game, so I wouldn't be too worried. But the Cardinals won this one 28-16, and the talk shows love when the Cowboys lose, so here you go, talk shows. The Steelers versus the Raiders on Sunday Night Football. You could already expect kind of how this one would go, but Kenny Pickett finally had a splash play to Calvin Austin. 72 yards for a touchdown. Probably the longest play we've seen in a minute in Pittsburgh. I am a Steelers fan. Davante Adams with a crazy game. 13 receptions, 172 yards, 2 touchdowns. Absolutely wild game out of Davante Adams. He might be the best receiver in football, I'm almost convinced. Jimmy Garoppolo, on the other hand, 3 picks. All of them were bad. Patrick Peterson had a punt, basically, thrown to him. Just horrible picks there. TJ Watt, another great game. 2 sacks, 3 QB hits. Just balling out. He has 6 sacks in 3 games. He's on pace for crazy numbers. Levi Wallace had 2 picks. Even though he had a bad game in coverage, 2 interceptions will make up for it. Josh McDaniels, the story of this game. The Steelers let the Raiders back in this game by some penalties and roughing the passers and stuff. And Josh McDaniels, down by the goal line, we had a penalty on a field goal. The Steelers committed a penalty on a field goal. Josh McDaniels had another chance to go for it. They were down 8. They could have scored, went for 2, and then try to tie it up. But instead, with a couple minutes left, Josh McDaniels, the coach of the Raiders, decides to kick a field goal and take the chances of having 11 seconds left and driving a full field to score a touchdown when they needed to score a touchdown the whole time. Super questionable. That could be a fireable offense. We could see him moved off his job pretty quickly here with another couple losses. He is on the hot seat for sure. The Steelers win this one on Sunday night, 23-18. The first of the Monday night games was Philadelphia versus Tampa Bay. Jalen Hurts, another kind of down game. 2 picks for him, and not very good picks. The first one was just a complete gift. DeAndre Swift, again, 16 carries, 130 yards. He now has over 300 yards rushing in his last 2 games. Ridiculous. Eagles' offensive line is a big reason for this. They have been so good. They've been creating all kinds of gaps and running lanes for DeAndre Swift to navigate. They've been so good. A.J. Brown got back on track. 9 receptions, 131 yards. He is truly a beast, and he's a big part why they won this game. Tampa Bay has no run game, 41 yards total. The Eagles' defensive line is a big reason for that, but Rachaad White and Sean Tucker just aren't really moving the needle on the run game, especially against a good defensive line like the Eagles. The Eagles win this one 25 to Tampa Bay's 11. The second of the Monday night games was the LA Rams versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And Joe Burrow is clearly still hurt. 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, just still struggling for him. Jamar Chase, though, was back. 12 receptions, 141 yards. What a game to get back after 2 really down games. Cincinnati D-line was the surprise of this game. 6 sacks, 10 QB hits, 7 TFLs. They were balling out this game. Matthew Stafford with 2 picks didn't really help the Rams here, and was a really sketchy game. The Rams are way worse on paper, but they kept in it, and the Bengals had to kind of tough this game out, and was a huge game to win, because if not, they would have fell to 0-3. They win this one, the Bengals do, 19-16. Thank you guys for watching my Week 3 NFL recap. I'll be back for Week 4.